The gun was inches from Marcus Chen's temple, and the man holding it had nothing left to lose. Marcus could see it in his eyes, that look of desperation that comes when someone has already lost everything. The warehouse was dark except for one flickering overhead light, and the sound of rain hammering against the metal roof made it hard to hear the man's breathing, though Marcus could feel it. Hot and angry against his neck. "You took everything from me," the man spat. "My business. My wife. My dignity. And you didn't even blink." Marcus didn't move. He had built his entire empire on calculated risks, but this was something different. This was a man at the end of the line, and the line had run out. "I can fix this," Marcus said quietly. "I can." "You can't fix anything." The man's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're just a monster in an expensive suit." The shot echoed through the warehouse. But the bullet never reached Marcus. His bodyguard, David, had been moving in the shadows the entire time. The man crumpled, and Marcus caught his breath, straightening his Tom Ford suit jacket like nothing had happened. This was his life now, constantly looking over his shoulder, constantly wondering who wanted to destroy him next. He told David to call the police and clean it up, like they always did. Like he always did. "You are on the right channel, just relax, this story will keep you super entertained. I want to know where you are watching from, tell me in the comment section. Also subscribe and like our channel, turn on notifications for more interesting stories." That night, Marcus sat in his penthouse apartment, looking down at Seoul from the 48th floor. His phone buzzed with notifications. Deal confirmations. Stock alerts. News headlines about his latest acquisition. He'd just bought out a competitor for $2 billion. The man had cried when he signed the papers. Marcus felt nothing. His assistant had called earlier with a list of his schedule for the next week. Board meetings, charity galas, press conferences where he would smile and talk about his vision for innovation and growth. More of the same machinery that had made him the richest man in South Korea by 35. He looked at his reflection in the window and almost didn't recognize himself. When had he become this? When had he crossed the line from ambitious to ruthless? From driven to monstrous? He thought about his mother, who had died when he was 17. She used to tell him that money was a tool, not a purpose. That the richest man in the world was still just a man, and a man without a heart was just a ghost in expensive clothing. Marcus hadn't thought about that in years. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. He called his personal stylist and asked for something completely different. No designer labels. No Rolex. Nothing that screamed wealth. Within an hour, she'd sent over simple jeans, a plain black shirt, and a pair of ordinary shoes. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. For the first time in a decade, Marcus Chen looked like everyone else. He told David he was going out alone and not to follow. David protested, but Marcus had already made up his mind. He needed to know what it felt like to be invisible. To be nothing. To see if there was anything left inside him besides the instinct to conquer and accumulate. He went alone. The nightclub was called Neon Dreams, tucked away in the Itaewon district. It was the kind of place where the wealthy went to pretend to be ordinary, but Marcus was doing the opposite. He walked in and found a table in the corner, ordering a beer like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's when he saw her. She moved through the crowd with a grace that seemed deliberate but not practiced. Her name tag read Amara, and she was unlike any waitress he'd ever seen. Not because she was exceptionally beautiful, though she was, but because she seemed actually present. When she took orders, she listened. When she delivered drinks, she remembered that one customer had asked for extra lime. She treated each person like they mattered, and nobody treated people like that anymore. You are about to experience the best entertainment ever. Click that subscribe button and relax, the twists coming next will surely give you chills. When she got to Marcus's table, she smiled. First time here, she asked, setting down his beer. That obvious? You're sitting alone in the corner like you're hiding from someone. She said it without judgment, just observation. Either hiding or running. Sometimes it's both. And which do you think it is? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Running, she said. People who are hiding still look over their shoulders. You look like you're just trying to remember how to breathe. He didn't know how to respond to that. Nobody ever said things like that to him anymore. Everyone was too busy counting his money or catching his crumbs. I'll bring you some water too, Amara said. You look like you need hydration more than alcohol. Over the course of the night, Marcus found himself watching her. Amara helped an elderly man find his keys. She sat down with a woman who was crying in the bathroom and listened to her story about a failed marriage. She gave half her tips to a busboy who mentioned his daughter's medical bills. She was nothing like the people in his world. She was everything his world had taught him not to be. When Amara came back to his table near the end of her shift, Marcus asked her a question that surprised them both. Why are you so kind to people? She paused, holding her empty drink tray against her hip. Why wouldn't I be? You don't know what someone's been through. You don't know what battle they're fighting. So you might as well treat them like the war matters. But it doesn't matter, Marcus said. Nothing changes. The world still turns. People still suffer. Kindness doesn't fix the broken system. Maybe not, Amara said. But it makes the day less heavy for someone. And when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when you're exhausted and broken and still trying to figure out how to keep going, someone treating you like you matter. That's not nothing. That's everything. When she walked away, Marcus realized his hands were shaking. He came back the next night. And the night after. Every night for 2 weeks, Marcus would put on his ordinary clothes, leave David behind, and sit in that corner while Amara moved through the club like she was dancing to music only she could hear. They talked in the gaps between her other tables. She told him about her life, about leaving Nigeria to find opportunities in South Korea, about working 2 jobs to send money back to her family, about her dream to open a small business that would hire people others had written off as unemployable. She never asked him what he did for work. She seemed genuinely uninterested in the machinery of success. What she cared about was whether he was sleeping enough, whether he was eating properly, whether the thing he was running from was getting closer or further away. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt seen. Are you loving how things are unfolding in this story? Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from across the globe, I will like to say hi. And then everything changed. On the 15th night, Amara didn't show up for her shift. Marcus waited for 3 hours, and when her coworker finally told him that Amara hadn't called in and wasn't answering her phone, something shifted in his chest. A panic he didn't recognize. A fear that felt almost human. He drove to the address she had mentioned once. He immediately traced her there. He found a small apartment in a neighborhood that made his stomach tighten. Broken windows. Graffiti. The kind of place where hope went to die. When he knocked on her door, there was no answer. When he pushed it open, he found her. She was on the floor, coughing blood into a sink. Her tiny apartment was sparse, a mattress, a hot plate, a single shelf of books. Medical bills were scattered across every surface. Amara, he said, rushing to her. Don't, she managed. I'm contagious. What happened? When was the last time you went to a doctor? Can't afford it. She tried to sit up, and he could see the effort it took. I've been coughing for 2 weeks. Probably bronchitis. Or pneumonia. Or I'm just breaking down because my body knows there's no point in holding together. Marcus had never moved so fast in his life. He called his private physician and had her at his penthouse within an hour. The diagnosis was severe pneumonia, complicated by malnutrition and untreated chronic stress. She had been coughing blood because her lungs were inflamed. She had been working 16-hour shifts while sick because she couldn't afford to miss a single shift. When she recovered enough to understand what was happening, Amara tried to leave. "I can't stay here," she said, looking around at the luxury apartment like it was a cage. "I can't accept this. I don't know who you are or what you want, and I'm not going to owe anyone anything." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "I owe you." "For what?" "Being kind." "That's not a debt. That's just being human." He took a breath. It was time to tell her. "My name is Marcus Chen. I run Chen Industries. I'm worth approximately $8 billion. I've spent the last 15 years becoming someone that even I despise. And then I met you, and you treated me like I was a human being instead of a wallet with a heartbeat." Amara stared at him. "You're lying." "I'm not. And I deserve your anger. I deserve for you to throw me out. But please, let me help you. Not as a debt. Not as an investment. Just as someone who finally remembers what it means to care about another person." She didn't believe him at first. It took 3 days of her testing him, asking him questions only the real Marcus Chen would know, before she finally accepted the truth. And when she did, her first reaction was fury. "You were playing with me," she said. "I was a charity case. Entertainment. Something for you to do because you were bored with your real life." "No." Marcus grabbed her shoulders, and she could see genuine desperation in his eyes. "You were the only real thing I had felt in a decade. You made me remember that I'm human. You made me want to be better. And then I realized that wanting to be better doesn't matter if I'm still operating from a place of control and power. So what? You're going to save me now? Make me your redemption arc? No. I'm going to step back. I'm going to let you make your own choices. But I'm going to fund your dream. Not as debt. Not as control. Just because the world needs more people like you, and I have the resources to make sure your dream becomes real." Amara looked away. "I need to think." She moved out of his penthouse and back to her tiny apartment, but this time, Marcus paid for the best antibiotics and the best doctor. He didn't visit. He didn't call. He just made sure she was taken care of, and then he disappeared from her life. What he didn't know was that Amara was making her own moves. She contacted journalists. She told them the entire story, how the MAFIA CEO had deceived her, how he'd been watching her without her knowledge, how he'd manipulated her into a position where she felt indebted to him. What she didn't mention was that none of it was actually true anymore. That the man she described was the man Marcus had been, but not the man he was becoming. The story broke like an explosion. MAFIA CEO stalks Waitress, pretends to be poor for manipulation, the headline screamed. Media outlets went crazy. His competitors circled like sharks. His board demanded his resignation. Stock prices plummeted. And Marcus, sitting in his office with David at his side, didn't fight back. "We can bury this," David said. "We can destroy her credibility. We can make sure she never works in this country again." "No," Marcus said. "She's right. I did manipulate her. I did use my power to place her in a position where she couldn't refuse me. And she's doing what I should have done a long time ago, she's telling the truth, regardless of the consequences." "You're going to let this destroy you?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Because I deserve it. Now, I really want to know, on whose side are you? Team Marcus or Team Amara? Tell me in the comments. Hope you're already subscribed to our channel." Marcus decided to give himself what he believes to be the best judgment. He stepped down from his position. He liquidated half his assets and donated them to social causes. He hired the best lawyers to make sure Amara's story was protected and that she couldn't be sued for defamation. And he wrote her a letter. The letter was simple. He told her that she was right. That she had done the brave thing. That he was stepping back from business entirely and was going to spend the next 5 years actually becoming the person she had believed he could be. That he didn't expect forgiveness. That he didn't expect anything from her. He signed it with his mother's favorite quote, "The richest man in the world is still just a man. And a man without a heart is just a ghost in expensive clothing." Amara received the letter and wept. For weeks, she tried not to think about him. She focused on her recovery. On her job. On her dream. But she couldn't shake the image of him sitting in that corner of the club, looking like he was drowning in his own life. 6 months after the scandal, she saw him again. He was working as a counselor at a non-profit that helped people in financial crisis. He was living in a modest apartment in a neighborhood not much better than hers. He looked thinner, more tired, but also more present. More real. When he saw her, he didn't approach. He just nodded, acknowledging that she was there, and went back to helping a woman fill out a loan application. That night, Amara did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She walked into his apartment building and knocked on his door. "I'm not here because I forgive you," she said when he opened it, looking shocked to see her. "I'm here because I realize that forgiveness isn't about absolving someone. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of their past actions." "Amara. Let me finish. I opened my business. The one I always dreamed about. It's a social enterprise that trains people who've experienced homelessness and financial crisis. We've employed 43 people so far, and all of them have moved into housing and stable jobs. I did that. Not you. Me. I know. I've been following your progress. You're extraordinary. I know I'm extraordinary. And I realized something. You know what you did wrong. You understand the harm you caused. You're actually trying to be better. Most people don't even get that far." She took a step toward him. "So I'm here to tell you that I don't hate you anymore. And I'm here to tell you something else." "What?" "That I still see you. The real you. Not the billionaire. Not the version pretending to be poor. The actual man underneath all of that. And that man. I think I love him." Marcus's knees buckled. "You can't." "I can, and I am. But I'm not going to be with you out of gratitude or debt or because you've paid for your sins. I'm only going to be with you if you're willing to build something with me. Something real. Something where we're equals." "I don't know how to do that," Marcus said honestly. "I've spent the best part of my life either dominating or being invisible." "Then we'll learn together," Amara said. "But I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we're going to be together, I need you to promise that you'll never go back to being the person you were. I need you to promise that every single day, you'll choose kindness over conquest." "I promise," Marcus said. "I promise with everything I am." Amara stepped forward and kissed him, and Marcus felt something release inside his chest. Something that had been wound so tight for so long that he'd forgotten it was there. His humanity. His capacity to love. His ability to be loved in return. They didn't get married right away. They took their time. They moved into a small apartment together, and for the first time in his life, Marcus learned what it felt like to have a normal life. They fought about dishes and bills and who forgot to buy groceries. Amara went back to school to formalize her business training. Marcus worked his job at the non-profit, making a fraction of what he used to make, and finding it infinitely more meaningful. 2 years after Amara knocked on his door, they got married in a small ceremony. His estranged father came, and seeing his son choose a life of purpose over power was something that shifted something in the older man as well. Amara's family flew in from Nigeria, and they danced and celebrated like they always had, with joy that wasn't contingent on wealth or status. Like this video if it moved you. Subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that they're worth more than their productivity, their wealth, or their status. On their wedding night, Marcus and Amara stood on the balcony of a modest hotel, looking out at Seoul. The city glittered below them, beautiful and indifferent, exactly as it had been when Marcus was at the top of the world. "Are you happy?" Amara asked. "Happier than I've ever been," Marcus said. It was true. The weight that he'd been carrying his entire life, the need to be more, to have more, to dominate more, had finally lifted. "Do you ever miss it? The money? The power?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "And then I remember that I was miserable. That I was a ghost in expensive clothing. And I realize that what I have now, this, with you, this life where I'm actually present and actually connected, is worth more than all of it." A year later, Chen Industries announced a new initiative. The company was being restructured to prioritize worker welfare, environmental sustainability, and community investment. The new CEO was a woman who had spent the last 3 years working her way up from the lower levels of the company. The old guard tried to fight it, but something had shifted in the business world. Marcus's choice to step away from the pursuit of endless growth had started a conversation. Other billionaires began to question their own lives. Other companies began to implement similar changes. Amara's social enterprise expanded to 6 locations across South Korea, and she began training program directors to replicate the model in other countries. Together, they'd impacted the lives of thousands of people who society had written off as disposable. 5 years after that night in the club, Amara and Marcus stood in their modest home, paid off without a mortgage, maintained without staff, looking at a letter. It was from a young woman they had helped train, and she was writing to tell them that she'd just opened her own business and had hired 10 people. The cycle was continuing. The impact was growing. "Do you remember," Amara said, "when you asked me why I was so kind to people?" "Of course," Marcus said. "You told me that you didn't know what battles they were fighting." "I didn't know your battle," Amara said. "I didn't know that you were drowning in success. That you were so like that you had to become invisible to find yourself again. But I treated you with kindness anyway. And that kindness came back to you multiplied 1,000 times." Marcus pulled her close. "You saved my life. Do you know that?" "No," Amara said. "I just treated you like you mattered. You did the work of saving yourself." Outside their window, Seoul continued to turn. The city that had once been the backdrop for a billionaire's hollow conquest was now the home of 2 people who'd learned that the greatest wealth was in the connection you could make with another human being. And if someone had told the Marcus Chen of 5 years ago that he would trade his empire for a life of moderate means and genuine love, he would have laughed. He would have said that person didn't understand how the world worked. But he would have been wrong. The world works on a simple principle that the rich and the powerful spend their entire lives trying to avoid, that human connection matters more than human accumulation. That kindness compounds in ways that money never can. That the person you become is far more important than the things you own. And in a small apartment in Seoul, Marcus and Amara had discovered that the greatest fortune wasn't in the bank account. It was in the choice to love someone, and be loved in return, exactly as you are. This is a story that actually happened. Not all the details are accurate, some names have been changed, some timelines have been compressed. But the essential truth remains, sometimes the person you least expect to change you is the person who changes you most. And sometimes, the greatest act of rebellion against a broken system is simply to opt out and build something real. If this story resonated with you, if you felt something shift in your chest when Marcus chose love over empire, then please hit that subscribe button. And if you have a story of your own, a time when someone's kindness broke through your walls and reminded you of your humanity, please comment below. Share your story. Because these stories matter. They remind us that we're not alone, and that change is always possible. We'll see you in the next story.